Welcome back. There is mounting pressure on Saudi Arabia this morning. Turkey's President Erdogan this morning says that there is strong evidence that the killing of Jamal Khashoggi was in fact planned days in advance. Erdogan claiming at least 3 separate Saudi intelligence agents were involved in the murder. It comes a day after Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin met with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, that is Mohammed bin Salman. President Trump said yesterday about the process, he's not sure.
Have a great group of people in Turkey right now and a great group of people in Saudi Arabia. We will know very soon. We have tremendously talented people that do this stuff very well. They're coming back tonight, tomorrow, and I will know very soon. And I am not satisfied with what I've heard.
Joining me right now is the former U.S. ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Robert Jordan. Ambassador, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for joining us. Give us your reaction on what President Erdogan is saying this morning. Should we believe him?
I think we should believe him, although I would say that his revelations have been not quite the blockbuster that he was advertising before the speech. But I think we've learned some important things. We've learned about this group of 3 men who came out early. They explored a forest 55 miles from Istanbul where perhaps the body could be disposed of. We've also seen, of course, pictures of a body double who left the rear entry of the consulate after Jamal was killed wearing Jamal's clothes. This clearly is evidence of premeditation. He also had a disguise on to make him look like Jamal. Who goes to a meeting in Istanbul with a fake beard unless you're going to try to cover something up? So I think we've learned a few interesting nuggets here. There was no finger directly pointed at the Crown Prince, although Erdogan in his speech did say that he believes King Salman is sincere. And by omission, I think he conspicuously left out Mohammed bin Salman.
Well, what about that? I mean, that's really the key point. How involved was Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince? There are calls, even from some in the Senate, in Congress, to remove Mohammed bin Salman from his leadership post in Saudi Arabia. Do you think there's a chance that will happen?
I think it's very remote, although those chances are growing by the day as the evidence continues to point toward him. I think there are likely many members of the senior royal family who are completely disgusted by this. Interestingly, King Salman himself personally sent Prince Khalid bin Faisal, or Khalid al-Faisal, to Ankara to meet with Erdogan. Khalid al-Faisal is one of the most respected senior princes in Saudi Arabia. And so there is a little bit of potential division between King Salman and his son in investigating the circumstances of all of this. We haven't heard yet anything from the recordings that Erdogan supposedly has. Hopefully Gina Haspel, our CIA director, will have access to that during her visit. But I think it's increasingly pointing to Mohammed bin Salman, which could lead to at least some instability in the kingdom, if not outright replacement of him.
And what will that instability mean for the United States? What do you think the U.S. needs to do right here? There are huge pieces of business on the table, as well as this partnership as the U.S. and the Saudis create and represent a united front against the terrorists in Iran. There's this $100 billion plus deal in terms of an arms sale. What do you think position the U.S. should take?
I think we have to have a stern talk with the Saudis. Undoubtedly, this needs to occur after more facts are known, hopefully in the next couple of days. It wouldn't surprise me if we were able to at least postpone or pause on some of these arms sales. They are not urgent. They're not even beyond the memorandum of intent posture right now in most cases. I think we could pause our supplies in the war in Yemen. We could stop providing munitions and mid-air refueling to them. And I think the private sector also has a role to play here. Clearly in the investment conference, much of the private sector bailed out, which was appropriate. I think we have some leverage here that we can exercise. We also have important authority over what's called the 1-2-3 agreement, which is the peaceful nuclear program the Saudis are anxious to start. They cannot get any of our technology. without approval under Section 123 of the appropriate act. And so this is something that, again, we have some leverage on. I think we should not be hesitant to use it.
Do you want to see sanctions of any kind on the Saudis? Do you want to see the use of the Magnitsky Act in terms of showing the world that the U.S. is not going to tolerate such heinous behavior?
Absolutely. Congress has already invoked the Magnitsky Act. It gives the administration 120 days to investigate and then to certify one way or the other as to whether there has been an extrajudicial killing or torture. And likely in this case, of course, they will find that. So I think this leads to sanctions that are important for us. We do have to recognize the Saudis are an important ally in fighting terrorism and also are an economic ally. But we can't sacrifice American values, and we can't certainly condone this kind of a brutal murder.
Ambassador, thanks very much for your insights this morning. Good to see you again. We appreciate your time. Robert Jordan joining us this morning.